The Giants blow a game in Philadelphia on Monday Night Football by a score of 23-17, an overtime loss. The Giants have not won a game since September. We now sit here on December 10th. So it's a few months. That's a long time. I mean, they're 2-11 now. It's getting embarrassing at this point, but really, my emotions are out of it by this point, and I just want the first pick. So half of this game was fun, obviously. It was cool seeing the Eagles fans boo at halftime and be all pissed off, and we were definitely in control for half of that game, but obviously it was a tale of two halves, and, the Giants could not hold on in the second half. They had basically no offense in the second half and all that type of stuff, and Carson Wentz and the Eagles offense finally got it going. So first, we'll start with the Giants offense, Eli Manning, all that good stuff, so let's get into that. So Eli Manning was 15 of 30, 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. It was his first start since week 2, I believe it was. So he looked pretty good in the first half. He looked phenomenal in the first half, honestly. I tweeted this was the best he's looked since that Green Bay playoff game a few years ago. So he looked great, but of course tailed off in the second half. Saquon Barkley had 17 carries, 66 yards, 3.9 per carry. So when you look at the stat line, I mean, obviously that's not a fantastic game, especially for a guy as talented as Saquon. But when you watch him with your eyes, he had a good game, honestly. This was the best he's looked in a while, in my opinion, so it's kind of an optimistic game for him. He had a couple plays where he was stiff-arming guys and creating yards out of nothing, so he looked great at certain points. It just wasn't overall a great game. He never broke that big run. He was close a couple of times, honestly, from getting away from one more guy and having a big run, but unfortunately it never happened. Darius Slayton had 5 catches, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think all of that was in the first half, as crazy as that sounds, but I think it's true. They went for him on a third down play, like a 3rd and 5 on a slant. It did not work. It was broken up by the defense. Nice play by the corner there, but Slayton had a huge first half. And honestly, I mean, I don't think he'll be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he is. But if I had to guess right now, I think he's more of a wide receiver 2. But at worst, he'll be a wide receiver 2. So that's great value for a 5th or 6th round pick, whatever he was. So I give Gutterman credit for that one. That's a great pick right there. Sterling Shepard added 4 catches, only 28 yards. So, I mean, really no one had a great receiving game outside of Slayton in the first half. The positives I kind of went over already. Saquon looked healthy. Darius Slayton had a huge first half. Eli looked great in the first half. I mean, Eli Manning played better than I thought he would, honestly, overall, so can't be mad at him, honestly. The offensive line wasn't awful. I mean, I think Nate Solder got beat a couple times, but we're just accustomed to it at this point. I mean, it happens a couple times a game at least, so you're kind of just immune to it as a Giants fan at this point. So it's kind of sad based off his contract that I'm saying that, but it's true. It's just what we expect as Giant fans at this point. But the offensive line, I mean, Eli Manning was sacked 2 times. Saquon had some decent holes, I guess you can say. So, I mean, I wouldn't blame this game on the offensive line at all or anything like that. I think they were decent in this game. Aldrick Rosas is getting better week by week, so that's good news. The last couple weeks or even 3 weeks, he's looked a lot better, so I'm glad the Giants stuck with him and didn't give anyone else his job. And I know they gave him some competition in practices, but he kept his job, and now he's looking better, so hopefully he can get back to that Pro Bowl type player we saw last year. The negative, so the offense just died in the second half. I mean, I don't know what the total yards were, but it would not shock me if it was under 100 total yards. It was pretty ugly, honestly. Another thing, the flea flicker play, which I know was kind of confusing. It was like a 3rd down and 15, which, I don't know why you would run the ball on 3rd and 15. I guess the Giants, they've ran draws on 3rd and 15s before, but that play would have worked, honestly. If you see the replay from the end zone, you can see Golden Tate was wide open. Whoever the free safety was, came up completely and fell for the run. So if Eli Manning was not pressured on the left side there, I don't know who the offensive lineman that was responsible for, but whoever gave up that pressure probably led up what could have been a huge play to Golden Tate down the middle for a touchdown. So that was unfortunate. They were outscored 20-0 in the after halftime, basically in the second half of the overtime. They were 2 for 12 offensively on 3rd down conversions. That's terrible. And their time of possession was 21-42 in favor of the Eagles. Of course, that's embarrassing as well. I personally believe Pat Shurmur was severely outcoached in this one. You guys know I'm not the type of person that likes to blame Pat Shurmur. I think the talent on this team is terrible, so I don't like to put everything on the head coach. But I think this loss you can kind of blame Shurmur for, honestly. He had a terrible, I think I put this in the next section, but terrible management with the clock at the end of the fourth quarter, I think it was, where there was like 35 seconds left, could have got the ball left with like 1 or 2 timeouts, decides to call a timeout with like 19 seconds left instead, so he just lets 15, 16 seconds run off the clock for no reason. He was basically scared to call a timeout because he figured that Doug Peterson would go for it. I thought Peterson called some nice fourth down plays and got his quarterback moving and stuff like that. I know you really can't get Eli Manning moving, so you're kind of limited, but we really haven't seen the same thing with Daniel Jones either, so I think Shurmur was pretty severely outcoached in this one. And Doug Peterson, I mean, that guy has balls. I mean, he goes for a lot of things. I mean, he'll go for like 4th and 1s on his own 30 and stuff like that. He's a very aggressive coach, so I give him some credit. I mean, some of the stuff Peterson does isn't phenomenal, but at the same time, I think he had a pretty good game in this one. Kevin Zeitler, sorry, I keep coughing. I'm like kind of sick still. But Zeitler had an injury, I think, to his foot. I think someone tweeted, Matt Lombardo tweeted that he was in a walking boot after the game on crutches. So, I don't know. He might be done for the season. I mean, you're 2-11. Who cares, honestly? I mean, if he doesn't come back this year, it doesn't matter. I mean, you still have Nick Gates. I'm kind of curious to see what Nick Gates is. I kind of wanted to see him at right tackle, but if he plays right guard, I guess maybe that's a future piece right there. But the Giants definitely have their guards for next year, so I don't know how much that actually helps. But at the same time, Zeitler might be done for the year. There's no point in rushing him back, obviously. So it is what it is. If that's it for Zeitler, I thank him. He had a very good year. He was the one offensive lineman I can truly trust this year. So that's the one guy on the offensive line that I can trust that Dave Gettleman brought here. I kind of trust Will Hernandez sometimes. I mean, sometimes he'll screw up with the run blocking, but at the same time, I think, Kevin Zeitler's been a nice pickup. Obviously, trading Odell Beckham for him it's a pretty big loss, but I mean, Kevin Zeitler's been great for us this year, so I love having him on this team. So I think that's it for offense. Now we'll get into defense and some general notes. So for the defense, the positives, their run defense still looks pretty good. I mean, I know they got carved up by, what the hell is the guy's name? I was going to say Baker Scott. What the hell is the running back's name? I wrote it down somewhere. Boston Scott, not Baker Scott. Boston Scott. But the run defense has definitely looked better. I went over this last week as well with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson. Ever since Williams came over here, the run defense has looked a lot better, so I got to give him credit there. Ever since Julian Love's been inserted into the secondary, he's been really good. I really can't complain about Julian Love at all. He's making his tackles. He's making good plays in coverage as well. I have no idea why it took so long for him to play, but dude's a good player. I mean, I liked him a lot in college, and I think someone in the offseason asked, like, hey, what's some of your favorite cornerbacks? And I talked about Julian Love. I mean, he was one of my favorite guys coming out of college, so I'm happy he's playing well. I know he's like technically a safety now, but I thought he was a good football player, so I think he can transition to safety just fine. Marcus Golden, O'Shane Ximines, really good pass rushing, and Ximines, another guy I liked in college. I mean, I'm happy to see him get 2 sacks. It seemed like he hit like a rookie wall type thing, but definitely had a good game in this one. Had some good inside moves and when Wentz was stepping up in the pocket to get to him. Marcus Golden continues to get pressure. I think Golden missed a sack early on, so he could have had another sack in this one, but I think Carson Wentz got away on like the first pass attempt of the game or something like that. So Marcus Golden, though, continues to get consistent pressure, and you have to love that. DeAndre Baker, this was his best game of the year. I don't care what anybody says. He's had some good games this year. This was his best game. If you want to forget about everything else he did bad this season, go back and watch this game. Do the same thing Dave Gettleman did with Eli Manning, like when he said, like, oh, if what I saw against Philadelphia wasn't a mirage with Eli Manning, then Eli Manning is still playing this league, or what the hell he said. I don't know. It's easy to make fun of Dave Gettleman, but DeAndre Baker was great. I mean, I don't even think he allowed a completion in this game, honestly. I mean, they tried to attack him a few times, but he was all over. I mean, he was just awesome in this game. So DeAndre Baker took a step in the right direction here. Hopefully he stays with it. I saw an article that he vows to be a good corner in this league, so I hope he keeps his promise, and I hope he's a good corner. I think, a lot of the thing with DeAndre Baker, I think he's talented. I mean, there was a reason I said I liked the guy coming out of Georgia. I wasn't just like saying that to, just be optimistic about the pick. Like, I thought he was a good player. It just seems like, I don't know if he can't understand the playbook sometimes or where he's supposed to be, because it seems like it's a lot of mental errors. I don't think it's a physical issue for DeAndre Baker. He definitely has the body type to be a great corner and a shutdown corner and stuff like that. So I think he'll be fine, but I don't know if it's a between the ears type of thing. I definitely have that issue sometimes, but it's for different reasons. But still, I get where he's coming from. The guy's young. He's very talented. I think he'll be fine in the future. Thought Janoris Jenkins was fine. I don't think they called his name too much. He made a couple nice tackles in this one, surprisingly. You're talking about Janoris Jenkins and making tackles. Leonard Williams was also pretty good in this one. I mean, he wasn't like, a game wrecker, but at the same time, he was making some good plays, some good run stops, some good pressures, as I mentioned before, in the run stops with Dexter Lawrence as well. Dexter Lawrence had a nice game in this one. I have to, call him out. He was good. So, honestly, I mean, I know I wasn't too thrilled when Lawrence was drafted, but he's kind of been what I expected him to be. Like, he's going to be a good run stuffer here for the next decade. I don't know what type of upside he has as a pass rusher or getting to the quarterback, but in terms of being a run stopper, this guy's going to be here for a long time unless, a new GM takes over and gets him out for some reason. But look, this guy could play in the NFL. He definitely belongs here, Dexter Lawrence, and I think he'll be fine. I just, I didn't really see the upside with the pick, but he'll be a fine NFL pro for a long time, so I'm happy he's with us now. So now on to the negatives. So Sam Beal, I mean, he had a lot of penalties in this one. It might have been only like 2 or 3, but honestly, that's a good amount. So had a couple like defensive holdings and stuff like that, or illegal contact, whatever the penalties were. Just stupid stuff, and I think he got beat on a couple plays as well. So he's definitely, I know he's only 3 or 4 games in his career at this point, but still, I mean, this is a guy that we invested the 3rd round pick in, so you hope that he played better. But, as I said, I mean, hopefully he gets better game by game and somehow gets better as the year goes on, and maybe, because right now, I mean, if the season ended today, I cannot count on Sam Beal to be a starting cornerback next year. But if he proves to us over the next, I guess three games, is it now? What week is it? I think it's 3 games only. Yeah, the next 3 games that he is a good cornerback, then I guess we can count on him next year. But right now, I mean, I can't really sit here and tell you in December that Sam Beal is going to be a good corner for us next year. So we will, I guess the future will tell with that one. Leonard Williams had a dumb penalty. It didn't really cost the Giants because he, I don't think they converted on that drive or anything like that. But he had a dumb penalty where he just put his forearm into Carson Wentz's chest. And yeah, I mean, part of me likes that stuff. I mean, don't let it, don't make it easy for the opposing quarterback and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, that's just a dumb penalty. So, Deon Buchanan, I mean, he wasn't on the field that much. I feel like it was a lot of David Mayo in this one, but Deon Buchanan had a blown coverage at one point. I think it was the play that, who was it? Carson Wentz extended. It might have been the play that Alec Ogletree missed the sack, honestly, and then Carson Wentz extended the play to Zach Ertz down the field. I think that led to their first touchdown. Did they score a touchdown on that drive? I think they did. I don't know. No, I think they had a field goal that drive because that was in like the first quarter, so it was a while. I don't know. But still, he had a blown coverage at one point. So Deon Buchanan, I mean, look, I don't blame Gettleman for taking a shot on the guy. He had previous ties with Arizona and James Bettcher, so it made sense to give him a shot, but he's not the answer, is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, I don't know if he'll be back next year, but he hasn't really impressed me too much. They let this Boston Scott guy kill them. That's the way I worded this. So, I'll try to pull up the stats real quick to see what his numbers were exactly. Because I tweeted as a joke. I was like, what round was this guy drafted in? Because you guys know how I feel about running backs and the importance of that position and stuff like that. It was just a joke, but he was 10 for 59 on the ground, 1 touchdown, so 5.9 per carry. Receiving, he was 6 for 69. Oh my goodness. So he had a big game in this one, over 100 scrimmage yards, had a touchdown as well. So yeah, that's like, the whole running back argument once again. Philly has a good offensive line. They create holes, and the athletic running back can run through the holes. He knows how to catch the ball and run through holes. That's what you need to do as a running back. So, yeah, it just proves my point once again. I mean, I know, I'd rather have Saquon Barkley than Boston Scott. I mean, no kidding. But at the same time, you get where I'm coming from. So, that's it for defense. General notes. So, they blew a 17-3 lead. No points in the second half offensively. It's pretty sad because really all they needed was a field goal to win this game in the second half. But, of course, it didn't happen. So, look, I'm not surprised. I mean, this is what the Giants do. I mean, they've been choke artists the last few years, and I mean, they've been close in games, but they can never pull them out. There's just a dark cloud over this organization, and they continue to lose, and they can't get out of their own way. That's just Giants football nowadays. It sucks, but it's the way it is. So, yeah, I was never confident they were going to win this game. Of course, I felt kind of good going into halftime. I was like, oh, maybe they actually come in here and upset Philadelphia, but, Philly wasn't they weren't great tonight. I mean, Carson Wentz's stat line wasn't great and stuff like that. It's not like any of their running backs, went for like 150 yards on the ground or anything like that. I said Scott had a nice game. Miles Sanders had some nice runs at some points, but it's not like they dominated us on the ground or anything like that. But still, the Giants just know how to blow games, and it is what it is. So I think I mentioned this before, but Pat Shurmur not calling that timeout at the end of the fourth quarter, I'm always in Pat Shurmur's corner. I can't defend that. That's just bad. I mean, he was out-coached right there. He was scared to call timeout because he figured Peterson would go for it. Why not give Eli Manning another 30 seconds and one timeout at least? It could have been two timeouts. I forget what it was, but one or two timeouts to try and get in the field goal range. We saw in the Denver game with the Denver and the Chargers 2 weeks ago with Drew Lock in his first start. I went over that. So if you didn't see that game, basically like they had the ball in like their own 25. There was like 20-something seconds left. And Vic Fangio, whoever the calls the plays over there for the Broncos, was just like, hey, let me take a deep shot and see if we can draw pass interference. And what do you know? They take a deep shot, they draw pass interference, they win the game on a long field goal by McManus. I'm like, why not try that in this game? Pat Shurmur could have called timeout. You get the ball back on like your own 20 or 30 yard line, take a couple deep shots. You don't get them, it is what it is. They get intercepted, okay, the Eagles are still on their own 40-yard line. So, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, call timeout there. Give your offense one more shot. It was a win-win situation for Shurmur to call timeout. He was being scared. I mean, that's just what a scared coach does right there. So that's not how you handle the clock right there. Eli Manning's record is now below 500. So somebody tweeted at me, and it makes sense. I mean, if you include his playoff record, he's still like 4 games above 500, but that's not the way people look at it, unfortunately. They're going to look at his regular season record and see that it's now 118 and 119, I believe. So it doesn't matter, obviously. I mean, who cares? It's one loss, but at the same time, it's not good for his Hall of Fame debate. I mean, I still think he's a Hall of Famer regardless, but at the same time, people can look at that and use it against him and say, oh, this guy, didn't even win, more than half his games, and they can use that against him. So that sucks, of course, but he definitely should have won this game. There's a lot of games in Eli's career that he had stolen from him, but it is what it is. So how hot are Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur's seats at this point? So I think this is it for Shurmur. I think he's done. I mean, especially a game like this against the rival Eagles, 17-3 lead at a halftime, and you blow that game. I mean, no, John Mara is not going to stand for that. I've tried every way to defend Pat Shurmur and say they should give him one more shot, talking about Daniel Jones and his development and how Pat Shurmur has a lot to do with that. But look, this guy's not head coach material. It is what it is at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I'll never believe that all of this is Pat Shurmur's fault. If you do, then I don't know what you're watching. I mean, this is a talent issue. This is a GM issue. This is a head coach issue. This is a offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, linebackers coach, offensive line coach. Every coach, especially except for the special teams. Their special teams has been great the last couple of years, but every other coach's problem. I mean, this is an organizational thing. John Mara is to blame as well. I mean, this whole organization just needs a cleansing. It is what it is. I mean, that's why in the offseason, I don't want to see Kevin Abrams as GM. I want to see them, outsource and go to a different organization and take an assistant GM from somewhere. People talk about the, what's the guy's name, like Ed Dodds or Dobbs from the Indianapolis Colts. Like, that's something I want to happen. Like, I don't know much about the guy, but take another guy from a smarter organization and bring him to this incompetent organization and see if it works. This happened with my favorite basketball team, the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, if you don't know their story, their previous GM traded like 4 first-round picks for the future. It was like 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. The new GM took over in 2017. Dude was in a deep hole, didn't have his own first-round pick for 2 years, made everything happened out of nothing, basically. It took 2 guys from the G League, which is basically like minor league basketball, made them into really good players, and then started trading all these assets to accumulate draft picks. And look, the guy's a great GM, Sean Marks for the Brooklyn Nets. He turned that organization from nothing with no assets into now one of the more well-respected organizations in basketball. So when people bitch about Jerry Reese, I just think about the Brooklyn Nets and Sean Marks. I mean, I know it's a different sport and it's not the exact same thing, but the guy Sean Marks had no assets whatsoever, no first-round picks for 2 years, made his team into the playoffs in less than 2 years. The Nets were not supposed to be anywhere near the playoffs, even at this point. But now, of course, they're in a different situation with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, all those guys. But you know what I mean? Like this is an organizational thing. If you hire the right people, you can get out of this hole. I know the Giants, you can never envision them winning ever again at this point because it's been so long and so terrible the last few years, but I'm telling you, if you hire the right GM, I think that's the most important thing. The right GM, the right head coach, and this next head coach brings his own people in that are also good coaches, I think you'll be fine. I mean, look, this roster isn't that talented, but it's not complete garbage. I mean, there are some keepers on this team. I talked about it. I mean, guys like Julian Love, Darius Slayton, hopefully Ryan Conley next year, hopefully DeAndre Baker, Jabril Peppers, O'Shane Zimenez. I mean, there's a bunch of guys on this team that hopefully you can keep next year, and I just want a smarter GM. Like I've said it before, I think Gettleman's a fine scout. He has an eye for talent somewhat. I just don't think he's a great GM. I mean, the guy seems like he gets fleeced in every trade he makes. I mean, except for the Odell one. I think that one was one that I guess you could make again. But at the same time, the Giants do miss having a wide receiver threat at that level. But I mean, the free agent signings have been pretty terrible outside of Marcus Golden and maybe somebody else. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, Michael Thomas was a good one, but for the most part, the free agent signings, I mean, even some of his draft picks haven't been great. You know what I mean? Like B.J. Hill, Kyle Lauletta. I don't want to judge the 2019 class yet, but even some of those guys. DeAndre Baker, of course, having some mental issues with this playbook and stuff like that, but I think he'll be fine. But you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like if they bring in the right GM, I think this is fixable. And I know it's going to take a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years. I just want to see this team move in the right direction. And everyone preaches, you need patience, rebuilds take time, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I completely understand how to rebuild. I don't need the explanation. But when I see this team go from 3-13 to 5-11, all the way down to probably 2-14 or 3-13 this year, you can see this team's regressing. And once again, Dave Gettleman told us in the beginning of the year he expects this team to compete for the playoffs. Well, now they're competing for the first pick. So, I mean, he wasn't really too honest with his words there. So, I mean, look, it's okay to admit that the guy's not a good GM. I think he's a fine scout. He has an eye for talent somewhat, but the guy, he doesn't use any analytics, and I'm not saying you should be completely analytic driven, but as I always say, it's a tool in the toolbox that you are able to use, but he refuses to use them, so it's just stupid. And doesn't understand positional value. Like, I want a GM that understands positional value, uses analytics, knows how to trade back in the draft, and just accumulate as many assets as you possibly can. So, I mean, I just don't think Gettleman's the right guy for a job like this. This is a very tall task for any GM. I'm not trying to say that taking over the Giants is an easy task for any GM, but this is a job for a smart person, and hopefully the Giants find one next year, because I honestly don't see this team being a winner until Gettleman's out, and I guess you can say the same about Pat Shurmur at this point. I feel like if you gave Shurmur an A- roster in the NFL, I think he'd be able to win 9 or 10 games with it, but this is not even close to that. So, I mean, the Giants can't squeak out these wins, and this roster right now is just not good enough. So, look, I hope they make the right decisions in the offseason. I'm just so fed up with losing. You guys could probably tell I'm just so done with this crap year after year. It's been 3 years now of just nonsense, and we had that one fluke year in 2016 where the defense was great, but a lot of those guys are gone. And you think about 2016 and that defense, and JPP's gone, Vernon's gone, Collins is gone. Who were the good linebackers that year? Kennard was there. Who was the other linebacker? There's somebody else. Can't even think, honestly. Janoris Jenkins, he's still here, but he was playing at a higher level. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, freaking Eli Apple was there. So, I mean, Darian Thompson, I know he wasn't great for us that year, but still, a lot of those guys are different now. This is a different team. So I just want someone else to come in here. I feel like if you bring Gettleman back one more year and let him sign free agents in the offseason, we know this guy doesn't know how to sign free agents, and he has a lot of money to use. I don't want him to waste more money and give out terrible contracts, because I guarantee you the first day of free agency, we'll all wake up and see, Leonard Williams has been signed to the Giants for 5 years and $15 million annually, and we'll all be up in arms about it. And I don't want that to happen. Just end it now before it gets worse. Like, don't let Gettleman drive this organization into the ground even more. Just hire a smart GM. That's all I want. That's all I'm asking for. I mean, you can put put a watermelon on the sideline and have him coach the team. Just give me a good GM. That's all I'm asking for. Just give me some talent on the field. I think the coaching, whoever it is next year, should be fine. I don't want Mike McCarthy or Jason Garrett, obviously, but if you give me a competent coach, you give me a Ron Rivera, you give me a Matt Rule, any of those type of guys, I think they'll be straight. So hopefully the next GM brings in some talent. I just don't think this thing's going in the right direction, honestly. I understand you need patience for rebuilds. I just do not see this thing going in the right direction. So this team needs a cleansing, and I hope they do it this offseason, because I don't feel like sitting here next year in December when we're 4-10 or whatever the hell the record's going to be and say, man, we probably should have fired Gettleman last year. Like, no, just do it now, please. I mean, really what's going to happen is, unless Gettleman makes the playoffs next year, he's gone. So, like, just end it now. There's no point in doing it again next year, and I don't want to do this whole thing with that we did with Tom Coughlin 4 years ago, where you fire the head coach and bring the GM back. Like, just please have them tied together. If you fire Shurmur, you fire Gettleman. Don't do it separately. I want this next GM to bring in his head coach. I don't want the Giants to put anything on the next head coach, you know what I mean, or the next GM, I meant to say. So hopefully they do it that way, and hopefully this team is ran by some more intelligent people next year and move in the right direction. So this has been a long reaction video, but I mean, we're at the point of the year where we have to start talking about next year and stuff like that. So I'll be making videos about potential head coaches and probably GM candidates and probably draft stuff in the next couple of months. So hopefully that'll be fun, and I hope you guys enjoy that stuff. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.